All right, we're not going to have a formal meeting tonight because we don't have a quorum, but we're going to go ahead and have some discussion tonight. Tonight we've got a gentleman here from Taylor Siefker and Williams Design. Sorry, that was a tough one for me.
This is the Siefker.
Okay, well, my apologies. And he's going to talk about our comprehensive plan, and they offer some services in helping communities like us redo our comprehensive plan, which is what this book or that book is actually. That's our comprehensive plan to talk about development and growth of the town. But I'm going to turn this over to you. And
okay. Well, again, my name is Scott Siefker, and with Taylor Siefker Williams Design Group, and this evening here just sharing a little bit of information in terms of you have a packet.
Thank you.
What kind of a comprehensive plan is, and just some broad outline in terms of some steps of kind of process, if you will, to look at refreshing or updating it. The year.
It was 2009 was when the last time we did it, so it needs to be updated.
Yeah.
In the comprehensive plan, we put that we were going to update it in 5 years, and then that didn't happen. So we're kind of behind the 8 ball, but.
Yeah, for good practice. I guess a little bit of background. So our firm is a urban planning community development firm. We work a lot with Deb and the folks at GRW. And I brought some samples in terms of some of our collaborative work together that I can share here after I'm done kind of going over some of the process talking points. But we work with a lot of both large and small rural communities, counties, and what have you. And the focus of our office, we're about 11 staff members, and the focus of our office is this, planning, community planning. So this is really, what we do, and day in, day out, and certainly when we think about kind of a community in terms of all the elements that make up a community, that's why we often work with folks like GRW that have infrastructure expertise and what have you, that we can bring that knowledge in as well. So on a comprehensive plan, you talk about like the sort of the last one that was completed, and you had the goal, if you will, to refresh it every the 5 years. We would always want to recommend that, because what's happening, and just from kind of your previous BZA meeting when you've been talking about some maybe some growth or other development opportunities, it's important to make sure that that's still in line with where you want to go as a community, because your comprehensive plan is really that if you will overall vision setting document, and your ordinances is one of the tools, if you will, that you have on the policy side, certainly to kind of make that vision kind of move forward. And so the comprehensive plan addresses all sorts of things. So state statute identifies 3 sort of core focus areas that you need to have in your comprehensive plan. It includes a statement of your vision or your kind of community mission, if you will, land use policies that need to be addressed, transportation policies that need to be addressed, and utilities. So those kind of nuts and bolts infrastructure kind of things. And then it talks about some broad other kind of categories that really make a community, right? So things like parks and recreation, or connectivity, or economic or downtown historic preservation or development, or what have you. And certainly that varies from community to community on what you may want to kind of look at or focus on. But the comprehensive plan is your opportunity to get kind of a direction or some goals about each of those elements, those various planning elements, and identify and discuss what those are, and then articulate, how do we get there? How do we want to achieve or move forward on some of those? So in your folder handout on the right-hand side there, there's a kind of a little quick summary process overview that kind of outlined, and it's very simplistically identified as sort of 3 phases. If you think about kind of a planning process, 3 phases. The first would be kind of taking that stock inventory of where you're at as a community. And so that existing conditions is, again, both the physical conditions of what is your land use that's out there, what's your sidewalk conditions, what are your road conditions, your utility capacity, or what have you. So It also looks at existing conditions from a demographic standpoint, right? So you're talking about, I think I heard you say a little bit over a 2% population growth that you've been having pretty consistently. So again, from a demographic standpoint, you want to understand, like, you know, when you begin to think about those, like, where are we going with that? And we can begin to make some sort of analysis regarding if this is a trend that you're on and you have this line here of sort of where it's going, you want to go over to here, how do you make up that gap, right? So those kind of things we would want to sort of begin to identify as part of some of that existing conditions analysis. We do a lot of, I think, open conversation in that existing condition period, that first phase as well. We talk about vision or public engagement or public outreach. The page behind the process sheet there highlights a variety of both traditional as well as virtual outreach techniques that we have used in a variety of planning exercises. And again, we like to tailor that engagement strategy, whether it's public workshops or steering committee, focus groups, social media, website platforms, what have you. We like to tailor that to kind of what best meets the needs of the community, and so that would be one of kind of the beginning discussions in terms of kind of your process is what is the structure that we want to get the kind of the public engaged, because we do want input from the residents, right? Because Deb or myself, we're facilitators, but the plan ownership needs to be yours.
The community, yeah.
And so the only way that we can ensure that is making sure that that engagement is offered in a variety of ways or manners. So you're making sure that from youth to retired and everyone in between has an opportunity to participate in a manner that they feel comfortable and appropriate. And so that conversation and those kind of visioning and kind of community direction discussions would take place in that first phase as well. So we take everything that we've learned, both in terms of kind of the existing conditions analysis, the demographic look, the kind of the public input, and in phase two, then we kind of would go through and structure, if you will, the draft goals and recommendations for those elements. So whether, again, it's land use or infrastructure or, again, economic development, recreation, overall quality of life pieces, and by that it could even be not everything in the comp plan certainly is bricks and mortar kind of projects you're identifying. You're identifying policy. Perhaps the ordinance or code is maybe going to need to have a little refresh, because from a land use or growth perspective where you're wanting to go, maybe your code is a little bit outdated to maybe not allow that to occur, as an example. And so sometimes that would be one recommendation that's on the policy side. On the programming side, as an example, there may be recommendations that come out of that on a quality of life that are about community branding or identity, or even like marketing, your festival. You also mentioned there used to be or maybe you still do, like in the summer, you have a 4th of July, or you had a summer.
Fall festival, I think.
Fall, okay,
Yeah.
fall, yes.
Just have a fall
Yeah.
festival, yeah.
So again, like the idea of even those kind of things from a programming standpoint could be, ideas or concepts. So again, it doesn't have to be just all bricks and mortar recommendations in the comp plan. There's policy or programmatic recommendations that could also kind of fall in that quality of life plan element. So that's where we kind of put the meat on the bones. And then you move into that third phase, that implementation strategy phase, because you need to know kind of a timeline of all the, whatever the litany of kind of recommendations or projects that you've identified as a community, who's responsible. And it's not obviously just the plan commission, it's not just the town council, it's other partners. They could be other state agencies or other nonprofits or other kind of groups that could help with funding, grant assistance for some potential programs or what have you. And so the implementation phase is really going through after we get the kind of the recommendations and kind of talking about from an action side of things, the who, the when, the what, the how. And so then you are left with a sort of a blueprint of kind of that checklist of how you can move some of these activities or programs forward. And so I can pass around here a couple of examples, and you can kind of see a couple of things I'm talking about here. So for instance, like the couple of action charts for a couple of the programs or recommendations for some of the assignments or projects that were identified in these respective communities. Another example. And at the end of the day, then hopefully what you're left with is what we like to say anyway, is something that's hopefully very user-friendly. So from an administration standpoint, it's something that there's an understood in terms of where the concept or recommendations or ideas came from, because of the engagement and the discussions that were held in the first phase. And then there's a sort of a clear, if you will, not overwhelming, like again, every project is on X person's shoulders. It's very clear that like, oh, okay, I get like these, making it up, right, whatever, these 3 projects, that kind of fall into my area, and that's, the kind of things that obviously over the next 1, 3, 5+ years we'll be concentrating on. So that's a very broad, I think, overview in terms of kind of the process that we would outline as we would move forward through the comprehensive plan and kind of review. And as I said, we help communities in a variety of ways, in a variety of different, sometimes we're just helping to do a sort of a refresh or an update. Sometimes we're doing a whole, obviously, rewrite, and everything is brand new. Sometimes it's just, assisting on the engagement side of things. And on the left-hand side of the folder, there was, again, just some examples of those communities in which we help facilitate those services. So, have another. So I don't know, questions in terms of kind of the, I guess, broad overview in terms of information sharing here, just kind of the broad overview of kind of the process of your comprehensive plan and what it can be in terms of a tool for the community.
So, a lot of information for a small town, too. I mean, this one's Petersburg. That's a lot of information on a little town that is. I mean, it's an older town.
As I said, we've done, from the rural communities to the larger. So we've worked on Louisville comprehensive plans. So we're now talking close to 1 million people.
Right.
We've worked on Laconia, Indiana. So another community on the river west of Louisville. But they, I think, at the time they were about 50, with a population of 50. And so that one we were proud in terms of our outreach. We almost, I think Amy would know better, but our participation rate in terms of one of our community vision sessions we held at the local fire station and had a cookout. And I think, had about 85 to 90% of the, when you have 50 people in the, community and you had a cookout, we were able to get nearly 100% of the community to participate. So, but I share that story in terms of obviously the scale of what Laconia was looking at was simple things like sidewalk issues or some, just, branding and identity type issues, or getting a functional town website up. So there was just some, public service tools available to the residents. So again, it really varies in the scope of kind of what we tailor. If you're moving an Okra from the Okra standpoint, there's obviously some other set of guidelines. I mentioned the state statute that outlines what a community needs to have in their comprehensive plan. If you would choose to be supported through the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, they also have some technical requirements that they ask the community to meet. And so Petersburg that's one that's an Okra fund. So that's an example of, I can't remember what Brookville was or not. It was not.
Brookville
It
was
okay, so both of those are an Okra, so they meet the Okra guidelines.
And is the Okra funding typically a percentage, or can they sometimes cover 100%, or?
The community would do the match.
Okay.
So
Alright.
I
I think they're up to 45,000
they're
now?
your size, you could get up to 50.
50,000
Yes, and so your
Towards
match would be
this.
$5,000.
Oh,
redo a comprehensive plan.
that'd be,
Yeah, so then you would have, I believe, like the $5,000 match for that, if you go for that full amount.
Okay.
Mhm.
Alright. We currently have budgeted about 25,000 for a grant matching kind of a thing, but
Now, because you're getting or working on a grant application for your wastewater update, I think that's going through the planning grant process. You can't have two active
Okay.
applications at the same time.
okay.
So you'd have to get that one approved first, and then you could apply for a comp
The
plan
planning grant.
planning grant. So it
Definitely
would
need that one
probably
first.
be, what did we discuss, July of 2022? That would be the earliest. I thought I had done that research, but I spoke with that grant administrator that you had said you worked with, and he kind of explained
Mike
all that to
Kleinpeter.
me. Yes,
Um,
yes.
so okay, I guess I thought we had put that on hold for that part because that was for contract B
Oh, okay.
for the
But just in
wastewater
case, you
treatment
just
plant.
can't have two applications go at the same time.
Sure.
So if you,
With Okra, is what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
right.
That makes sense. So
For the planning grant, I know that they've kind of restructured at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and they do quarterly. So you would do, if that's the direction you'd want to go, they do quarterly reviews and award now quarterly. I know for the first quarter and the second quarter, they've now, so the July of this year would, at the beginning of the third quarter, would be, from the planning grant standpoint, the first that you would be able to submit, just because they just take take them once each of the 4 quarters.
Sure. Okay, but that working with Mike Kleinpeter, and then your company would make sure and hit all those bullet points that Okra
Right.
is wanting.
Right. So they add.
Yes,
So the
Mike.
list here is not again exhaustive of all the Okra elements, but beyond the sort of the main 3, the land use, transportation, and the utilities, they I think have about 10 or so more, and most of these are like housing, broadband. That's a new one for this year that they've added, that a broadband access has to be part of the comp plan per the Okra requirements. So we actually have done even just broadband plans for communities. So they used to have that as a separate study, and now they folded that into the comp plan requirements. So I think there's altogether 12 or 13.
Yeah, I thought there's 13 now.
13 like categories of elements that they want to see as part of this.
Is that published? I mean, does Okra
yeah.
give that
The
out?
technical requirements are on there. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what they're asking for is that in this plan, we show in our comprehensive plan, those 13 items, that we've investigated those as to how they fit into our community and
Right.
what it would take to get there,
Exactly.
and some kind of time
Correct.
frame. Not that we currently have those items.
No.
It's just development of that plan.
Right.
Okay.
And they require, again, like the outreach as a component. They want to make sure that you've demonstrated, did you talk to your community?
Right.
And so, again, if you're doing this on your own, or not part, the state statute doesn't say you have to have a public workshop, as an example. Okra doesn't say you have to have a public workshop, but what Okra says is that you have to have public engagement, because from their standpoint, they want to ensure that, like, did you speak with your residents in terms of were they involved as part of the input to create the sort of what became the plan recommendations.
Okay.
So there's always that component. The demographic component is in there from the Okra requirements as well. Again, state statute doesn't necessarily say that you have to have it, but in order for us to kind of think about, well, what do we need from a thinking in the 5-10 year for roads as an example, understanding demographics is sort of a good sort of foundation point for kind of thinking about recommendations, right? So it just makes good sense.
Mhm.
So if we wanted to try and get started on at least the first piece, do you have a time frame, or can we work on, one piece, and then because of this OCA grant issue that right now we're working on the wastewater
Sure.
treatment plant, but then we wanted to still apply for a grant for this, but we don't want to wait till next year. Is that something that we can kind of a la carte, or
So,
do you rather just?
so the OCA grant itself has a time frame on it. Obviously, when they are kind of providing kind of the grant, they want to sort of say, we need an end date, right?
Right.
And so theirs is a 12-month for the planning grants, and that's from when they award it to you, and not necessarily when you actually would start. There's usually maybe a month or two in terms of just getting other kind of things together. We usually, for an OCRA, if we're following kind of the OCRA kind of process, we like to have it all done within kind of the 10 months, because we know that the adoption, you want to get that all adopted so you can get your grant closed out and not have any issues. So if you're doing it a la carte, I think things to me that you could pull out and sort of begin earlier on. For instance, that first phase where like the engagement and discussion in terms of like kind of that community or public input, I think could be something. And then the sort of maybe some of those existing conditions or what have you. I think all of that can be maybe pulled out. That's going to be put into your kind of the final plan anyway. So
Sure.
That could certainly be started or pulled out ahead of time. You would have kind of a jump start, but again, you would probably be, from a cost standpoint, depends on then what you would go for on the grant side of things, because you would be able to have expended something already at the beginning that wasn't part of the grant, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What do you estimate the total cost would be for this comprehensive plan update?
So for the OCRA process, we follow in rough kind of terms again, where they've now upped the sort of the cap to 50. So I would usually recommend communities do that between 40 and 50, just to make sure, because the more, so if you're closer to that, that range, then we can offer more on the public engagement side of things. So not every community in terms of, some things chooses or we get a website, or we do a school. Like we've done school programs where we have we develop an assignment for like a age appropriate, like 5th grade group, right? And then we go and we talk to them, because again, that's a different kind of input that you're going to get from somebody that may come to like a meeting or a public open house or a fish fry or what have you. Even those kind of things, like we set up a booth at like a festival, or we've done like the fire station, cookout. Those kind of things, that higher range allows us to do one or two more of those other kind of things, rather than just sort of limiting the engagement to sort of like, a couple of workshops and a website or something. You see what I'm saying? You can add a little bit more on kind of the engagement platforms, or variety of those. More options, right.
But we've done them where if Okra's only giving you $40,000, we've done a full comprehensive
Oh,
plan
yeah.
for $40,000.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
whatever you want to or have available, we make it happen within that.
To get the requirements. Like what maybe you don't get maybe is again like the fire station cookout, where we're having that you maybe don't have that. We maybe just had the public workshop and that's it. So it met the requirements. We just didn't get as broad of kind of options. But it totally meets the requirements and allows us to sort of get some input. We just maybe didn't have as many options to sort of gather that conversation.
It's kind of like when you go to McDonald's, you'd like to supersize that meal.
That's what you do. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, And I know we've been talking about updating our comprehensive plan for a little over a year now. We prioritized getting our UDO first, which worked out great for that. So, but when kind of what stimulated us, wanting to reach out to, ask Deb about this, and she got you involved, was I saw that Danville was updating theirs, and they put together a complete, separate website dedicated to their community input and, why are we doing a comprehensive plan update, and how can you be involved? And I thought it was just really, well done, and kind of it made me want to give them input, and I don't even listen. So I was like, hey, look at that. So, but that's kind of what I want, to find that that draw to our community of, getting them to give us, some significant input. Because I can make decisions about things all day long. It doesn't mean that everybody in the community wants to go that direction.
Yeah. So that kind of example on the digital platform, we've done things, and they kind of come and go. It depends on, sometimes they're just the life of the project, and then that's sort of it. Sometimes, and again, depends on how, right, if they're wanting to have the cost kind of resources put into that, right? So if the community has their own, sometimes like Huntingburg, so this one that Deb and I, and we're just finishing up, actually we finished with the comp plan, and then we moved into the ordinance work after the comp plan. And in Huntingburg, they just put a tab on their website, on the tab, the city. So we just provide information, and they just, post it there. Whereas in other communities, we develop, like what you're describing, you develop a sort of a standalone project, if you will, website. And it just varies. Sometimes we'll do, so like the social media, so Facebook or Instagram, we'll do a sort of a whole social media, and then maybe that takes the place of the website, because that's how we're, getting our audience to know about meetings or what have you. And other times we just send it, and the community, if they have like their own platform, then they use their own, because they already have we don't have to build, an audience of followers. So it all just varies, and that's why I said in terms of that sort of first outreach or engagement discussion, we'd want to sort of, what is your communication plan, and what do you want to do? And then we would come back and kind of say, okay, we think these 4 things are what we is appropriate based on what we heard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our previous comprehensive plan, they had a pretty extensive survey that they sent out to the town. I had gotten started, and I built one on SurveyMonkey, but I thought I was going to be able to send that out, put it on our Facebook page and our website, but it was too many questions for their free service, so I have to figure out if we want to pay for that, or if we want to go
use,
this other
that
route.
platform or similar,
Right.
all the
So,
time.
if I'm going to spend money, I guess, in my mind, I want to spend it all in one place and get everything kind of on the same page, so to speak. So I'd rather not spend money on a SurveyMonkey survey and then have to convert it to something else.
And you
to
want to make sure,
fit
so
with.
we of course try to make sure that, like, when we're organizing like the survey, just using that as an example, that we're organizing some like-minded questions in terms of that are pertinent to sort of the plan topics that you may want to have some input on. And if you come to a workshop, if you're on the survey, if you are at, if we have like the fish fry at the kind of the event, that it's sort of the pop-up event right at the fire station or what have you, we may be asking themes and variation of the same question, but you're getting different people responding, but at the end of the day, we've got a consistent, so for this topic, we know this is kind of our response, even though we asked the same question in a couple of different ways in a couple of different platforms. But
Sure.
that allows you to get the broadest sort of input or discussion. And so we do try to make sure that we're cognizant about making sure that we're asking the question a little bit more than once, just because we know some people are answering it one way or at one platform, and some are coming to a meeting, and we want to make sure we're still getting the same kind of question and dialogue to those groups. The other thing, if you, with your other grant administrator, for the Oak Route, you would have to do your income survey. Maybe you've already gone through that process.
Oh,
We did one like November-ish.
Okay.
Oh, I
Okay.
see.
Because of-
Yeah. Okay, that would be the other thing that you could start on, because you'd have to have that completed for your application for
Right.
Oak Route. Yeah.
Oh shoot, no, that's another question. Oh, the previous comprehensive plan set up steering committees. Is that the same thing as what you're talking about with the?
Yeah, the steering committee would be the sort of the main group. We would usually use them as kind of the sounding, I'm trying to look at the kind of table of contents here. The kind of the sounding board or the sounding body for kind of the,
Mhm.
they would get, here's the draft of what we're, have them kind of, and so we give some recommendations regarding, this is kind of the cross-section of some, participants that would be, I think, effective for participating on the committee. In the Okra language, they call it the Comprehensive Plan Committee, the CPC, but steering committee, it's the same, that kind of group or, body would be something that we would, recommend forming and having them sort of be the kind of the, if you will, sounding board as we're developing the plan and going through the process.
Okay.
Other questions?
Did you guys have anything else that you saw or thought about after? I mean, I really liked the comprehensive plan they came up with in 2009. I liked it a lot. I just would love to see an updated version so that we know, because one of the huge things in the previous one was the community wanted to see blighted properties cleaned up and trash removed, that kind of stuff. They also wanted to see more information about the potential of municipal supplied water. So
Yeah.
We've got to start looking at water from the standpoint of fire protection, if nothing else. I mean, I realize people that are on the wells in the old town don't have a problem, and I understand that, but at some point, if we're gonna grow, we're gonna have to have water for fire protection, or we're not gonna get development. I mean, that's just a big deal. So, we've got to start figuring out how to do that.
water is super easy to get here in Clayton.
It is, and I'm not arguing, I mean, 25 foot down and you're in the aquifer.
Right.
It's so simple here, it's not funny.
Yeah, so-
We literally sit on a lake, so.
And we just have to figure out a place where we're gonna put our water tower and where we're gonna, and then where we're gonna, how we're gonna run all the piping to
Again,
supply
when you
all
go
that.
from some other, on those kind of huge infrastructure kind of pieces, you'll, or even if it's a park plan, as an example, just do something a little simpler. So, say you're, wanting to kind of expand or acquire a parcel or some areas for some open space or a park area, right? So, all the comprehensive plan, you can use all these things that build your case, whether it's for large utility projects or a park project or what have you. All of these things that help build your case help you get that funding assistance, right? And so by having you be able to reference, like in the comp plan, the community supported this park, right? And so then you could move forward, in terms of like an LWCF funding application perhaps to get that accomplished. But until you have something, if they're reviewing an application for that, and you don't have anything that documents like, does the community want this? I don't know, right? This allows you to have that documentation to help support all of those types of projects. So I think
Absolutely.
those are again, it's a good foundation, and it's again, the comprehensive plan is not your zoning, that's that's different.
Yeah.
But they kind of work in tandem, right? So like your land use in here could talk about, like, from a growth standpoint, like this is kind of perhaps what we would like to sort of see from a growth standpoint. And then a tool to maybe help that when that comes along, so when the developer maybe approaches you, they look at, kind of your land use, and okay, from a growth standpoint, we see, we're interested over here to do this type of X business, right? And that fits with your community's vision that you articulated here. It's how we're meeting in terms of on the ordinance side, this is how we're, you know, proposing to sort of organize said site development. And it's, you know, connected, and so then as a administrative body from the BZA, Plan Commission, Town Council, it's very easy to follow, like, oh, yes, this is what we're trying to do, this meets that kind of requirement from the ordinance standpoint, and so that would be, you know, kind of, again, from the land use side of things, how the comprehensive plan could be used as certainly a policy tool that helps, from an administration side of things, make, you know, some decisions.
And it also kind of minimizes your legal vulnerability. If you said this area is going to be residential, a project that comes in that's residential wants to look at that, you can confidently say, yes, let's rezone it and move forward. It's been no secret since it's been documented in a plan that that's what we've been thinking about.
So
So,
what you're saying is, like, if we get back on this annexation thing, there could be a page in there that says, if we were to get it annexed, this surrounding area, then we would like to see this developed into this, and this, if development were to occur in that
Correct.
area, which would help guide people, say 20 years from now, if, well, obviously, probably not, I might still be here in 20 years, but I'd be ready to retire too. You know, we help the future people look at what we had thought process, because let's say they get that and it never gets developed for 20, 30 years, but we've laid it out, that this is what we'd like to see, then it's already laid out.
and what's nice too in the comprehensive plan is you can plan for those areas outside your community if you choose. Your ordinance can't regulate it yet, but if it is annexed, then it will regulate it, so.
Yeah, it would kind of be laid out like as a, this is the idea we have for that area.
Yes, yes.
That would work
No.
well with the.
We do have an obligation to make sure our comprehensive plan doesn't overtly conflict with the counties, right? Or, I mean,
It's preferable that they work together, but you're your own entity. If you guys aren't on the same page, you can do what you need to for your town, so.
Right. You just can't do anything with anything outside the town.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
is there a benefit to, in part of this process, of getting our current comprehensive plan distributed out to as many people as we can also, or do we just,
Well, not
Mm.
knowing what's sort of in the current one, you know, obviously making it available in terms of, you know, that's certainly something that is
Like even
appropriate.
just on the website.
Right.
yeah, like if I
Right.
scan it in and publish
Right,
it
that is
on
certainly
our
appropriate.
web page and then just said, we're in the process of
You know,
updating
update or
this,
something, right, at
but
this
here's
point,
your chance to look at where
the
we
current one.
are,
Yeah,
and then we're, okay.
And that would also tie in back to the whole survey or social media or whatever, that they could have that to look at, to know what we're even talking about
yeah.
and why we're asking for their input.
As a-
in
as
the
a-
surveys or whatever we would do at that time.
As an ending deliverable, we always give you the digital, because now that, you know, we're assuming that it would be, you would have like a digital footprint posted somewhere of the, you know, the final version. In the process, we try to make it fairly clear in terms of like what a comprehensive plan is and why it's important that you as a community give us some of your thoughts, because this is setting the direction for the next 5, 10 plus years. Yeah. Well, good.
Okay.
Well, again, you have my contact information, and obviously, as I said, Deb, we work together very frequently on a variety of these assignments, and if you have any questions on kind of anything we went over here this evening, certainly feel free to, you know, give me a call or an email or whatever, and be happy to kind of provide any kind of other comments or answers or clarifications as needed. So,
Thank you very much.
all right,
Thank you,
guys.
yeah, thanks for making the trip out.
Well, I guess we'll call it unofficially over, since we never officially started. Unless anybody's got anything else they'd like to discuss, or we have more issues.
Quick question, if we
Sure.
decide to go with their, if we decide to go with their firm, it is not our decision technically, that's.
That has to go back to the
decision
council for funding.
for
Yeah.
Funding, because there's funds involved, correct?
Well,
We could make a recommendation to the council that we would like to use their
Yeah.
services.
Or a request, you just
Yeah.
say, hey, this is what we want to do, and then,
Council approves or denies it.
right,
Okay. That was one question I had. about
right.
it.
But that's definitely, I think that's definitely within the bounds of the planning commission to, you know, search through all that and then come up with a recommendation to the town council and say, you know, in our process of updating our comprehensive plan, here are the steps we wanna do, here's the entity we wanna work with, so on and so forth.
in full transparency, if you would go through the Okra process, because if you're doing it locally, you know, if you go through the Okra and get awarded a grant, then they do require the community to send the kind of a notice that you're wanting to prepare a comprehensive plan and to at least 5 qualified entities. Whether or not those people would respond to you is obviously their own individual, you know, but, you know, theoretically then you would, you know, would get some responses back and then make a decision from there, based on that. So that would be, if you're following the Okra, they do have that kind of qualification-based selection.
But if you're just doing it
So-
yourselves, you don't have to entertain others if you choose not to.
So we couldn't pick your service and then get the Ochre grant and apply it to your work
But
initially. We would have to say, we have your service and then 4 of your competitors in the mix, and then we would,
if
Get the
you're
grant.
pulling some early work out first, you mean, that could be done independently, but then anything that you're using the Okra dollars for, you'd have to have gone through the quality-based selection and, you know, they want to document that you're being transparent about, you know, kind of the process and that you're advertising that, you know, you've gotten this grant award and you're gonna move forward with the, so I
okay,
just share that just because that's, I know if you have the Okra process, if you get the grant, that's sort of their criteria.
okay.
So like an open bid, basically.
Yes.
Pavement bid,
Quality bid.
almost.
It's very
Similar.
similar to like a contractor type of bid, yes, for that kind of thing, yeah.
Make sure I understood.
And it's because of where the money's coming from, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
public money,
Right.
yeah,
right.
okay.
Makes sense. I just wanna make sure I understood what he was saying by that.
Okay,
Thank you very
Good
much.
talk.
And
Yeah.
we will